Those of us in the scientific community regard evolution as the only theory that ties the diverse discipline of biology into a meaningful whole. The theory of evolution is as important for the biological sciences as the atomic theory is for the physical sciences.
There is an increasing number of scientists, both men and women, in science who are moving away from the acceptance of broad-scale evolution. One of the reasons certainly is that the evidence for the individual is just not convincing. But I'm convinced that creation is the only intelligent, rational position with regard to origin questions.
This is the Ray County Courthouse in Dayton, Tennessee. In this courthouse, 56 years ago, the famous Scopes trial was conducted. It came to be known later as the monkey trial. A school teacher was being tried for teaching evolution against the law in the state of Tennessee at that time. It really developed into a debate between two prominent Americans, Clarence Darragh, a criminal lawyer from Chicago, an agnostic who did not believe in scientific or biblical creation, and William Jennings Bryan, an orator who 3 times ran for president of the United States. He was a fundamentalist Christian who believed in scientific, in biblical creation. It was quite a debate. Today, we're talking about the debate that is going on between scientific creation, biblical creation, versus evolution. Stay tuned.
From Liberty Mountain in Lynchburg, Virginia, the following program is a special presentation of the Old Time Gospel Hour. Now, here is the moderator for this evening's Creation versus Evolution debate, Dr. Jerry Falwell.
Good evening. Since mankind came into existence, he has asked such questions as, who am I? Why am I here? And where am I going? The origin of species, where did I come from, has been another question that man has debated for nearly as long as he has been asking those philosophical questions. In fact, the answers to those questions determine not only how men and women view themselves, but how they view others as well. Some religious people have felt that science is the enemy of religion. Some scientists have believed that religion is the enemy of science. Both camps have erected a high wall between them. I believe both sides have been wrong. Religion and science, rightly understood, are not enemies. In fact, rightly understood, they complement each other. The purpose of tonight's debate is to begin to tear down that wall. Anyone who knows anything about me is aware of my belief that the issue of special creation versus evolution is the foundational premise for all truth. I hold to the view of biblical creation because I believe in the inerrancy of Scripture, and I accept totally the Genesis account of creation. Millions of persons hold to that position. However, there are millions of persons who do not believe in scientific creation. They accept various theories of evolution. And tonight we have one scientist who holds to the evolution view of man. Those who believe in special creation have been greatly disturbed that in many public schools, evolution has been taught as fact. To compound the problem, many educators and some media personalities have maintained publicly that there is no scientific evidence to support the concept of special creation. They have maintained that special creation is merely a religious philosophy and is not supportable in the arena of science. Therefore, the Old Time Gospel Hour proposed earlier this year that a nationally televised debate should be conducted between 2 eminent scientists who hold opposite viewpoints on the origin of species. Let me now introduce the participants in tonight's debate. First, from the Department of Chemistry at the University of California, San Diego, Dr. Russell F. Doolittle. Dr. Doolittle will argue the evolution theory. Next, from the Institute for Creation Research, also in San Diego, Dr. Dwayne Gish. Gentlemen, welcome to Liberty Mountain and to Lynchburg, Virginia. The ground rules for tonight's debate are as follows. Each gentleman will have 18 minutes to make a position statement, then 5 minutes for rebuttal, and then 2 minutes for summary. We request that all applause be held until each speaker concludes his remarks. By the toss of a coin, It has been determined that Dr. Doolittle will speak first. Dr. Doolittle.
I'm here this evening against the advice of many of my colleagues. They have pointed out to me that this is a no-win situation, that in fact, how can you come into the home of the old-time gospel hour and really hope to convince anyone of the factual nature of evolution? They point out also that it's impossible for anyone in 15 minutes to outline the tremendous amount of data and information that leads to the concept of evolution. They point out that this is a very different debate than kinds of debate I may have had with Dr. Gish on other occasions. It's not the same as going over to the student cafeteria and exchanging a few words here and there, skirmishing a bit about this or that. That in fact this is an enormous media event witnessed by millions of people perhaps, and that what it will amount to is really publicity for a special cause. They point out that I'm really a stage prop here, just sort of a necessary fixture, and that there's no way that I could convince anybody to change their mind about this particular view. Now, of course, they're right, and the question comes up, why in the world am I here tonight? And I'll tell you that the reason I'm here tonight is that I really am a concerned citizen, and I'm worried about the future of education in America. I'm very much worried about what has happened during this past year in Arkansas and Louisiana, where in fact the state legislatures have seen fit to award the equal time teaching of creation and creation science in the science curriculum. To me, this is a travesty. Even though, of course, being way out there on the frontier in California, I perhaps might not have been moved to be some sort of carpetbagger and come all the way out here to Lynchburg and do it, if it hadn't been that, in fact, various things going on in the state of California also have moved me to my concern. There was a poll that appeared last May showing that, in fact, half the people in California wouldn't mind if, in fact, equal time were given to the teaching of creation alongside of evolution. Now, this seems so alien to me, that as evolution is a part of science, whereas creation and so-called creation science is a religion, and our country was founded on this principle of keeping the two separate, it just seems so strange that I felt I must come here and speak out. Now, in California, something else happened last year, the events of which moved me very much to come here and try to be a spokesman in speaking in opposition to people who call themselves creation scientists. These events occurred in Livermore, California. About a year ago, parents found that their children were coming home from the 5th and 6th grade of a particular school and were telling their parents stories about science class that smacked very much of fundamentalist religion. And in fact, after it went through a period where various committees were faced with the traditional dilemma of teacher freedom versus what's going on in the classroom, it was found that a teacher had taken it upon himself to introduce creation science teaching in the classroom in Livermore, California, without any mandate from the people who lived in that community. In fact, when this committee went in and inspected, they found that it was a virtual propaganda campaign that was nothing short of indoctrination. They found that there were 8 different film strips with accompanying cassette audio. They had 8 different audio cassettes besides, 6 hardbound books, 24 paperback books, 8 pamphlets, 40 copies of 8 different newspapers, all bearing the creationist stamp. The overwhelming majority of these materials emanated from the creation press, but I've got the name here someplace and got it wrong, but it's Dr. Gish's institution. It is the Creation Life Publishers that are an arm of Christian Heritage College, the home base of the Institute of Creation Research. Some of these materials contain such statements as, evolution is the best tool Satan has to destroy the minds of young people. There were many of them, and in fact, I thought about this debate tonight. I thought the best way for me to make my point, not necessarily with the people here in Lynchburg, but with the heart of America that I hope will have some sense about this, is to read from these materials to show what you're getting into if you want to follow Mr. Falwell's advice about putting creation science into the curriculum. Right, most of these materials were authored by Drs. Gish, Drs. Morris, Mr. Parker, and Bliss, and I'd like to use them now to just tell you what it was that so upset me. I'm going to start with one particular one called Dry Bones, probably familiar to many of you in the audience. Dry Bones is purportedly an article or a book about fossils. And what it's supposed to do is show, in fact, how the fossil record can be interpreted in terms of creation, special creation. This book is in the form of a dialogue between a father and his two young children, David and Diane, and its message is to explain how the fossils are just a natural result of the great Noah flood, Noah and his ark, all about 3,000 years ago or several thousand years ago. Let me just read to you a few passages. Diane has just inquired about a fossil snail that David had found, and her father has just explained that it was drowned when Noah's flood covered the earth. I'm going to start with a further father talking here. He says, here's another picture of another extinct creature, Diane. Do you know what it is? She says, of course, it's a dinosaur. Did dinosaurs live when Noah lived, Dad? And that's what I think, he says. The way it looks, dinosaurs were drowned in the flood, too. Besides, what did we see on our camping trip last summer? Do you remember the Paluxy River near Glen Rose, Texas? Oh, yes, we saw footprints of man and dinosaur together. I guess man and dinosaur had to live together if they could make footprints at the same time. Now, in fact, folks, I have to just tell you that the Paluxy human footprints with dinosaur footprints ranks among the greatest frauds of our time. The locals down in Texas simply carve them in among the dinosaur tracks to sell to the tourists. Now, the thing that is most astounding to me is that, in fact, the creationists well know this, and on occasion they will even admit it, even in print once or twice. But there is Dry Bones still out there in the classroom, and it even recommends a film down the bottom here, Footprints in Stone, that follows the same line, available from the Films for Christ. Let me continue. I want to go on with the dinosaur business here. By the way, Dad, if dinosaurs were alive when the flood came, did Noah have to take them in the ark? He surely did. God told Noah to take at least one pair of all the dry land animals. So here we have now dinosaurs, which of course were extinct long before mankind appeared on the earth, going off in Noah's ark, in this particular book being used in the 5th and 6th class grades at a Livermore public school last year. He went on. They confirmed that the reason that Noah had to have this flood, because he had to make these animals extinct because our sins made the world so bad. And so it goes on in this little book. I'd like to continue one more because now we want to get into the case of what does it have to do with science and evolution. It says now, Dad, you were telling me that the fossils were probably things drowned in the flood, right? Yes, Dave. He's talking to Dave now. And so the fossils were alive at Noah's time and are probably only a few thousand years old, right? Right. Well, my friend who told me about evolution showed me a book. It said that fossils are millions of years old. He said you could prove it with uranium dating. If you use uranium to date fossil rocks, Father said, sometimes, bold print, you do get ages in millions of years. But did your friend also tell you about scientists at Oak Ridge National Lab? No, what about them, Dad? They used uranium dating on wood, in rocks of the dinosaur group, and got ages of only thousands of years. Now, quite apart from the fact that there's no uranium in wood, I'd like to know what those Oak Ridge scientists had in mind. I'd like you Oak Ridge people to write in and tell me, come clean now. How is it that, in fact, you think those dinosaur prints are only a few thousand years old? That's hokum. I think that the only thing that we can ever say is that any implication that dinosaurs lived a few thousand years ago is sheer gobbledygook. Now, going on to read one last passage here, since I think it really makes my case. I guess uranium isn't proof after all, is it? I don't think it is, Dad says. But don't just take my word for it, David. You read what the Bible says. Study science for yourself when you get older. I want to know that you think for your own good reasons. You know, Dad, I was just thinking, if there isn't really any proof of evolution, why do people believe it? Like that Dr. Doolittle fellow. Not because of the fossils, Dad says, that's for sure. The fossils go along with creation. But I can tell you why I once believed in evolution. And now, capital letters, you believed in evolution, Dad. Yes, I did, David. I even, boy, this is like the Confession of St. Augustine here. I even taught it in college for 7 years. Really? Why did you believe in evolution, Dad? I thought, bold print, I believed it because of all the evidence. I really believed it because I didn't believe in God. I'd like to read that passage again, because as far as I'm concerned, that's why we're here tonight, and that's what this debate is all about. I thought I believed it because of all the evidence. I really believed it because I didn't believe in God. And as I interpret that, it says, if you only consider the evidence, then you'll accept evolution. But it's only when you go to the mystical and the supernatural that you find yourself forced to deny it. Of course, I could be accused of some vivid reading here and taking things out of context. After all, you know where I come from. So let me read you a letter from a citizen in Livermore. It happens to be an open letter. It's from Dr. Edward Teller. Dr. Edward Teller is a famous atomic physicist, father of the you-know-what, and not usually known as a reflex liberal, and I'd like to read a few lines. He wrote about dry bones after he saw it, said, dry bones, whose use in the public schools in Livermore, etc., dinosaurs are seen lying restfully in Noah's Ark. He says, as a fantasy, this is charming, and many a child will love to see it, but it is not presented as a fairy tale. The book advocates the strict literal interpretation of biblical creation. It misrepresents science, Darwinism, and the modern method of establishing dates of past events using radioactive substances, though this method has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. That's an open letter from Dr. Edward Teller. Now, there were many, many other things in this science classroom that were extraordinary. There was one about learning about the sun. So there's a film strip. I have the strip that goes with the film strip with me. It says, I'm the sun, 93 million miles away from you folks down there. My intelligent creator designed me to make a lot of different things happen from way up here. This is in the 5th and 6th grade classroom, Livermore, California, fall 1980. Another one down here. Did you notice your Earth is tilted at 23.5 degrees? Our creator did this on purpose. It goes on. This mentions creator over and over and over again during this and sets the whole solar system as though an intelligent creator system had just gone out and done it in one day. All right. There were many, many more. There's the handy-dandy evolution refuter. I have a checkout list showing that many children were taking that one out. Dry bones and others going along. Dinosaurs, those terrible lizards by Dr. Gish. Many others. But now that I've told you why I'm here, now I'm going to move into what I consider to be the strong evidence for evolution. But all of that was to say that I'm concerned when materials of that sort are introduced in a classroom in with nothing short of a blitzkrieg to put one narrow point of view before people. With that, I'd like to start my own little slideshow here and quickly go through some of the evidence that I feel most favors a natural evolution of all life on this earth. Now, if I may see the first slide, I think it's going to, oh, it's over here on my left. It shows that, first of all, that there are many, many different fields that contribute to evolution. I'm only going to stress a few this evening, but they cover every aspect of science can be brought to bear, and it's all self-consistent. That's where its major strength comes, that everything adds up for everything else. And furthermore, it not only has to do with life on this earth, we could bring in astronomy to this picture, and on my second slide, I'll show you a picture of the galaxy Andromeda. This galaxy is, in fact, 2 million light years away. We ourselves are in a similar galaxy, the Milky Way, stretching so far across that it takes light almost 100,000 years to get from one side of our galaxy to another. Well, any place, I would contend, that a life occurs in either of those galaxies or any other one, it's going to evolve in the same way that we've seen it evolve here on this Earth. The next slide is just going to hurriedly introduce a little roughage, you might say, for the talk to show you that, in fact, there are a lot of molecules that occur out there in interstellar space besides the stars. I'd like to especially emphasize that many molecules made up of the small atoms, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen, the kind of which living things are made, occur out there in open space, including things like ammonia and water. And there's one up there on the list in particular, HCN, that's hydrogen cyanide, very key molecule for life, and I'm going to come back to that in a few minutes. But it's on the next slide now that I want to just stay and dote for a while. This gives some ages, and I think that here is one of the two fundamental things I'm going to try to emphasize during the course of my short talk here. One is how old the universe is and the Earth. There's a very big distinction between people who accept evolution and those who want to go with a biblical, a special creation account. That's one. Then secondly, after that, I'm going to switch to the man ape-like ancestry business, taking the two most important ones here and cutting out all the in-between stuff, even though that's an enormous amount. All right, well, according to the principles that I accept, our universe is something of the order of 15 billion years old. There are a number of ways of estimating this age, having to do with how big the universe is and how fast it's expanding and so on. But I want to go strictly, quickly now to the Earth. The Earth should be in here on this list at something of the order of 4.6 times 10 to the 9th, that is to say 4.6 billion years old. I think that almost all scientists agree that that's its age. And I want to tell you how they know that. They got it first by dating, radio dating meteorites. They used 3 different methods, not just one. They used a uranium decay series to lead as one principal way that can be used. They used another one using the elements potassium and argon. They used another one using rubidium and strontium. And all 3 of these gave the same age. Now, what they were dating here were meteorites. And the assumption at that time was that meteorites, which are formed out in the outer reaches of our solar system, or presumably at the time that the solar system was formed, are an example of what the Earth might have been like in terms of its age when it was formed. Now, clearly, the surface of the Earth is weathered during all this time, and it's very hard to find rocks that are still in that pristine condition to give those old ages. The oldest rocks are only something of the order of 3 or 4 billion years old. On the other hand, the big confirmation of all this came when our astronauts actually went to the moon, and they brought back those moon rocks. And they brought those moon rocks back, and they were dated in the laboratory, and zingo, right on, 4.6 times 10 to the 9th, the exact same age as meteorites, the same age that all scientists that were seriously involved in this thought the Earth was. Now, at this point, I have to ask, because I feel this is so important, I'm going to try and pin Dr. Gish tonight down to tell me how old he thinks the Earth is. He doesn't like to come up with hard numbers on this in my previous experience, but I'm hoping America will be watching to see if he'll give us a number. And the reason is that creationists like to be a little slippery about this. There are some of them that like a very small number, a few will stretch it a little bit. For example, I have here a quote from Jerry Falwell, his famous Penthouse magazine interview, Penthouse, March 1981, no applause, page 151. Falwell said, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. If you read the first 3 chapters of Genesis carefully, there's a very clear, unlimited time span there. It could have been millions of years, could have been hundreds of millions of years." Now, that's Jerry Falwell's view about all this. I want to hear Dr. Gish say tonight how old he thinks. 30 seconds, I'm running out of time, it's incredible. All right, well, I have to really quickly go here. May I, in fact, quickly now just go through my slides. I just thought what I think is a 30-second flash here. These have been the fastest 18 minutes of my life. And if I'm now on my last slide, I've been squeezed out. My last slide just went by. I'm out of gas, and I think that...
I'm sorry to interrupt, Dr. Doolittle, but your time is up, and thank you. And now with his initial statement from the Institute of Creation Research, Dr. Dwayne Gish.
Thank you, Dr. Falwell, Dr. Doolittle, ladies and gentlemen. There are 2 fundamentally different explanations for the origin of the universe and of the living things it contains. According to the theory of evolution, or as we should more properly call it, the evolution model, everything in our universe has come into being through mechanistic processes which are ascribed to properties inherent in matter. No supernatural intervention of any kind was involved. In fact, by definition, God is excluded. Thus, while not all evolutionists are atheists, the theory of evolution is an atheistic theory. According to this theory, all living things have arisen from a single one-celled organism, which in turn had arisen from a dead, inanimate world. This theory may be called the general theory of evolution, the particles-to-people theory, or as I sometimes call it, the fish-to-gish theory of evolution. On the other hand, after 120 years of Darwinism, a rapidly growing number of scientists have become convinced that natural laws and processes absolutely exclude the possibility that the universe could have created itself, and that the best available evidence demonstrates that living things could not, and in fact did not, arise from lower forms. These scientists have become convinced that the concept of creation is a much more credible explanation of the evidence related to origins. According to the concept of creation, or as it may be called, the creation model, the origin of the universe and all living forms came into being through the design, purpose, and deliberate acts of a supernatural creator. The creator, using spatial processes not operating today, created the stars, our solar system, and all basic types of plants and animals. Although there were no human witnesses to any of these events, creation can be inferred by the normal methods of science, observation, and logic, just as surely as we can all tell the difference between a pebble formed by natural processes and an arrowhead created with plan and purpose. Let us now dispense once and for all with the notion that this is a debate between science and religion. Each concept of origins is equally scientific, and each is equally religious. In fact, neither qualifies as a scientific theory. The first requirement of science is observation. Obviously, there were no human observers to the origin of the universe, the origin of life, or as a matter of fact, to the origin of a single living thing. These events were unique, unrepeatable, historical events of the past. Furthermore, even if evolution were occurring at the present time, it would require hundreds of thousands of years to produce the kind of change needed to document evolution. Ultimately, then, no theory of origins can be considered a scientific theory in a strict sense. Creation and evolution are inferences based on circumstantial evidence, and predictions based on each model can be tested and compared with that circumstantial evidence. Among creationists are found those of almost all religious persuasions, except atheists. And among evolutionists are found those of almost all persuasions, including atheists. However, since evolution is a mechanistic, atheistic theory, it is a basic dogma of agnosticism, humanism, and atheism in general. The one-sided indoctrination of our students in this materialistic philosophy, in the tax-supported public schools, in our pluralistic democratic society, is a violation of academic and religious freedoms. Furthermore, it is poor science and poor education. To remedy this intolerable situation, creation scientists are asking that, excluding the use of the Bible or religious literature of any kind, only the scientific evidence that can be adduced in favor of creation and evolution be presented thoroughly and fairly in our public schools. After students have had an opportunity to examine all the data, consider each alternative, and to weigh the implications and consequences of each position, then they should be challenged to decide for themselves which is more credible or reasonable. Now that is good education in the finest traditions of academic freedom. Now let us consider the available scientific evidence. According to the Big Bang theory of the origin of the universe, about 10 to 20 billion years ago, all the energy and matter of this entire universe were crammed into a cosmic egg of subatomic particles and radiation. Of course, no one has the foggiest notion where this cosmic egg came from or how it got there. Zap, there it was. Then, for some equally inexplicable reason, this cosmic egg exploded. And out of this initial chaos, our marvelously complex universe somehow created itself. A relatively short time after this explosion, we are told, the universe consisted of an expanding cloud of hydrogen with a minor amount of helium. The late Professor Harlow Shapley of Harvard University stated that some people piously proclaim, in the beginning God. I say, in the beginning hydrogen. He went on to say that starting with hydrogen, natural laws in time, one could explain the origin of the universe. Of course, he could do no such thing.